Welcome to Peligro Life. I've traveled all over Costa Rica, from the rainforest, the beaches, the national parks, but there's one place that I continue to come back to more than anywhere else in Costa Rica: La Fortuna. It is not just a volcano, it's waterfalls, hot springs, tons of wildlife, and incredible adventures just waiting for you. In this video, I'm not just going to tell you what to do here. I'm going to tell you about my non-negotiables, the things that are overrated, and what's still on my list to try even after so many times of being here. So let's get into it. First, let's talk about where La Fortuna actually fits in your Costa Rica vacation. It's about 3 hours either from the San Jose airport or the Liberia airport. When you get here, I highly recommend spending at least 3 days. That way you get the full experience and you can see and do everything that you want to do. Luckily, La Fortuna is super easy to get to. You can take buses, private shuttles, but I highly recommend having a rental car because that's going to give you the most freedom to explore everything that La Fortuna has to offer. Now, La Fortuna fits really easy into most routes when you're traveling Costa Rica, but I highly recommend you save it for the end because it has probably some of the best relaxation in the entire country. Yes, I'm talking hot springs, and we'll get to that in just a second. There are 3 things that I consider non-negotiable if you're going to visit La Fortuna. First, Arenal National Park. This park has 2 entrances, one where you can go on the side of a volcano, the other where you can go to the lake, and let me tell you, there's wildlife everywhere if you know where to look. The trails really aren't that hard, and if you want more information on this, check out the video I made on it. Second, Lake Arenal. A lot of people skip this one, but I think that's a mistake. Lake Arenal offers cooler temperatures, tons of activities to do on the water like stand-up paddleboarding, kayaking, jet skiing, even wakeboarding. But where it's really at is the views. And even if you're just driving around Lake Arenal, this offers some of the best views in the entire country. And third, and probably the most important reason to visit La Fortuna, the hot springs. This is one of the biggest reasons that La Fortuna feels different than anywhere else in Costa Rica. You have so much geothermal energy just piping through the ground that there's a free hot river that flows near Tabacón. And if you don't want to do the public thing, I get it. You can choose whatever level of luxury and go to the 5-star Tabacón or Aguas Baldi and have a water park while you're in your hot springs. Honestly, I think this is my favorite reason to visit La Fortuna because I can go on an adventure all day long and then come back to my hotel, and usually they'll have hot springs that I can just sit back and relax looking at the stars. Another great thing about La Fortuna is just how many adventures you can choose from, all with a gorgeous volcano in the background. Because La Fortuna is one of the top tourist destinations in Costa Rica, there's a ton of different opportunities to go out and explore. You can do zip lining, ATVs, horseback riding, chocolate tours, coffee tours, look for sloths, and the list goes on and on. You can definitely book in advance, but the town is full of tour operators and you can go window shopping for the opportunity that's right for you. Something else incredible about this area is the wildlife. It's situated perfectly just above the Caribbean slope where you get all sorts of animal species mixing together. You can see 2 species of toucans, monkeys, sloths, frogs, reptiles, and even the critically endangered great green macaw. Here, the nightlife for humans is pretty low-key, but if you're an animal, it's a completely different shift change, and I highly recommend checking out a night hike. One of the coolest things is you don't even need to go that far to see wildlife. I was hanging out at the hot springs in Montaña de Fuego, and every night just after sunset, the red-eyed tree frogs come out. And so we were just hanging out, relaxing in the hot spring, and right next to me was a red-eyed tree frog. Now let's talk about where to stay, because this matters more than people realize. I really like staying anywhere between La Fortuna and Lake Arenal. This is kind of the main strip that's close to all the adventures, all the restaurants, and you're a little bit more surrounded by wildlife there. I have stayed outside of La Fortuna and it's a little bit cheaper, but I gotta be honest, it really wasn't worth being so far away, and I spent way more time driving to the places that I wanted to be. When it comes to places to stay, I look for value. So does the property have hiking trails, a waterfall, or hot springs on site? That way I don't have to pay for it somewhere else. One of my favorite places for this is Montaña de Fuego because they have a really nice pool and hot spring area, as well as the hiking trails, and for me, those red-eyed tree frogs that come out just about every night. With that said, the prices have got a little bit high for me, and so I see the value in getting the day pass that includes a meal, and then just going back to my hotel after a long day of adventure. I also really like Arenal Lodge. It's higher up in the mountains, so it gets a little cooler, but it's right next to Mystico in Arenal National Park. Something else about this property that I love is that it's completely immersed in nature with all sorts of fun trails that you can explore whenever you want. Otherwise, to get the most bang for my buck, I typically just book an Airbnb. Just be sure to get one that has an amazing view of the volcano. We know where to stay, what to do, so let's talk food. I will be honest, there's not one place that has just blown me away and that I always have to come back to in La Fortuna. But El Chante Verde was probably the best meal that I had with a really cool atmosphere. La Street is pretty tasty and definitely the most happening place in town. It's also close to places like Fortuna and Lava Lounge if you want a different kind of atmosphere. For cheap local food, Soda La Hormiga is pretty hard to beat. And for breakfast with an epic view of the volcano, you gotta check out Raúl Castaño Fortuna Mirador. Okay, so this isn't technically La Fortuna, but nearby is the town of Nuevo Arenal, and there's tons of cool stuff to see there, especially because it's right on the lake. It's definitely worth a day trip and even a couple nights if you have the time to spare. A few of my favorite things to do here are check out the Avatar tree in the lakeside park. If you're looking for food, check out Moya's or Tinajas for one of the best sunsets and pretty tasty pizza too. But by far, my favorite place to enjoy quality craft beer and an incredible view is Lake Arenal Hotel and Brewery. That place gets 5 stars in my book. Let's talk tourist traps. La Fortuna Waterfall is beautiful, but at $20 a person, I think there's better options in the area. In fact, Rio Celeste costs less and has a way more impressive waterfall. The only difference, you can't swim at that waterfall, but there are swimming hole spots just outside of the national park. You can always check out El Salto, which is a swimming hole right off the road with a waterfall and a rope swing. This tends to attract the younger crowd, and it can get a little busy on weekends. Now, you've probably heard about Mystico and their hanging bridges. Is it worth it? Absolutely. This is one of the coolest places in the area, and I totally see the value. Their trails are really nice, and you get some incredible views on those bridges, as long as you're not afraid of heights. Even though I've spent a ton of time in La Fortuna, I haven't done it all, and there's still things left on my list, like Cavernas de Venado. This is for the true adventurer who doesn't mind crawling and swimming through a historic set of caves that is beyond impressive. I've also been really excited to stay at El Silencio and Arenal Observatory Lodge because these two places have their own trail systems and they are so deep in the rainforest, I can only imagine the animals that are living out there. To sum it all up, La Fortuna is a must in your Costa Rica vacation. You have the hot springs, the national park, wildlife, easy access, and so many adventures to go on. It's one of my favorite places for a reason, and I'm sure you'll decide the same thing after you see it. For a deeper dive into some of the other things you can do around La Fortuna, check out some of my other videos, like the one I did on Arenal National Park. Thanks for hanging out with Peligro Life. Stay wild.